Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, the youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry, whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that is what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Balhamus. I'm joined by my fellow host and good friend,
Kyle Gray. Josh, I just want you to know, we were laughing before we started this thing, and I was really tempted to start laughing when you first kicked it off, but I feel like I held together.
That's good.
I held together. I held it together.
Held it together.
I held it together. So I would like a sticker.
I don't have any stickers on me. My daughter was here earlier
Thanks.
today.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. This is another episode of Stacking Chairs. Hey Josh, it is a good week. We actually are doing 2 podcasts in this week.
Yeah.
Because we have a special guest who is not here all the time.
Can't miss a good opportunity.
You cannot miss a good opportunity. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching, you will see the wonderful Krissie Glass here. Very excited about having Krissie here on the podcast. Krissie is not a stranger to this campus and to camp. She's been here on video. She's been here speaking. But hey, Krissie, it's good to have you here.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of y'all's cool podcast.
Cool podcast.
What's
Let's
up?
It is cool. I watch it.
You know what? I
go.
sat there and I thought, I don't think this is episode 75.
No, this is episode 73. Or
So, ladies and
72.
gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. We're going to do 2 more podcasts and we're going to go. No, So I got to meet Krissie years ago when we lived in Fort Worth and just built a friendship with her. And my wife and I are just so thankful for her connection to us and for her laughter that she brings into our home. And she is always one of those people that we're like, anytime you're here, please stay with us. And here's what I appreciate about Krissie. She's not no, I'm going to go stay in a nice hotel. She's like, sure, I'll sleep in your kid's bedroom. like whatever. Like she's just so down to earth. So Krissie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you work for, what you do, and then we'll get in and we'll talk about today's subject.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like you said, my name's Krissie, and I love being here. I love being in Florida and a part of Word of Life. And I'm actually in Texas. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But ironically, the organization I work for is here in Florida.
That's right.
And it's in Leesburg, Florida, and it's called Care for Pastors. It's a nonprofit ministry organization, and we offer counseling services, resources to the entire pastoral family. So pastors, spouses, their kids, PKs like me.
Yeah.
We want to be a place that's safe for them to come and share what's going on in their life. And so absolutely love what I get to do. Absolutely so thankful that this is a resource for pastoral families.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our listeners are pastors, youth pastors, and things like that. Is that a resource that they can take advantage of?
Absolutely. And it's not expensive. That's the first question is counseling can be so expensive.
It is, yeah.
And it's biblically based, faith-based counselors, and it's affordable. And we want pastors to take advantage of anything that we have to offer because it's needed. People need it.
So because we are a very transparent podcast, we're not airing our dirty laundry in front of everybody, but just transparent. I meet with one of the counselors. Over there at
You've
Care for
talked about
Pastors.
that briefly.
Absolutely. Yeah. But this is the ministry that we got connected
Oh, gotcha.
to. And man,
Okay.
it has just been so encouraging and uplifting, but real. You know, like the guy that I meet with or have been meeting with, I'm so sorry. I do need to call you back. I know.
Life.
No.
Life.
That's why she's here, actually.
She is.
She's coming to make sure that you're...
To make me feel guilty.
Did you see my person yesterday?
I did, actually.
Oh, that's crazy.
And he said, "Where's Kyle?" I'm just kidding. He didn't
Did he do it?
No.
I honestly would have felt like, oh my God. No, but here's what I appreciate. Man, real as real can be.
Yeah.
But honest, loving. It is not the perfect picture because I don't think any of us can be, but the as best possible picture of grace and truth.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes our sessions are a little bit more truth and there's sometimes our sessions are a little bit more grace, but man, it's been so good. Krissie, let me start off with this. Why do you think like there's a specific ministry in the midst of counseling ministry, but there's a specific ministry for pastors, for pastoral staff, for pastoral families? Why do you think that's so important?
Oh, goodness. Well, growing up in ministry, we didn't really have a place to go because pastors, their purpose is to help other people.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to find a place for them to get help when they need it. And it's hard for pastors and their families to admit they need it. And so this ministry is so important because it says it's okay to not be okay. You can be a good pastor and still struggle with things. And it's actually good to set the example to the people in your church and in your community by saying, hey, I need help too.
Yeah.
I don't have it all together. I'm not perfect. And I find that when pastors do that, it actually encourages their congregation. And it's an important ministry that has not really existed until the last several years.
Yeah.
I have said for years, and I really still believe this with all my heart, that the loneliest people in life are pastors' wives and youth pastors' wives. But I might have to I might have to correct that statement and say that pastors and youth pastors' kids,
families,
because
as a whole.
At least as the pastor, you know, you've got some people that are in your corner of, oh, pastor, that was such a good message. Oh, pastor, but you might not have somebody to talk to, but at least you're getting praise and admiration from someone.
Sure.
And who does number one, who does the pastor talk to when he's struggling? Who does the pastor's wife talk to when she's struggling? Who do the pastor's kids talk to? I don't want to dominate all the questions. I apologize for jumping on this.
No.
But who do you think is the toughest, like, to go and get counseling in that situation? Like, you are talking to, whether you're watching or you're listening, Krissie, you are talking to the majority of our listeners are people in full-time ministry.
Yeah.
Some of them probably sitting there, and you know who you are listening to this thing saying, I know I need to go talk to somebody, but I'm afraid. Who do you think is the hardest person to hear that?
Well, I want to add to something you just said. I think a lot of people in the ministry don't want to get help because they fear what it may look like.
Yeah.
But they also fear any consequences. A lot of times, pastors and church leadership, whether it be elders or deacons, if they find out that their pastor's struggling, it's just not normal. People don't know what to do with it. So I just want to add that because there is a lot of fear in the family, whether it be pastors' kids, their spouses, the pastors themselves. There's a lot of fear of what happens if they admit something's wrong or if someone knew they went to go get help. So we see this time and time again with the pastors and their families that come to us. But I would say probably the most difficult person in the pastoral family is the pastor. We see a lot more pastors' spouses, wives. We see a lot more kids. A lot of times their parents make them come.
Really?
But they come and they usually stay once they come for the first session. They're like, okay, maybe this is really good for me. But it's really hard for the pastor because a lot of times they feel like they have to hide it. And so it's not worth anything that could happen if it was found out that they needed help and got help.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I feel like a lot of pastors they're scared of having to get help. They're scared of the perception of having to get help. But that could also mean that they have to step away from their ministry for a while. Like that could in turn hey, you're in a deep enough spot here where you need to go on a sabbatical. And I mean, do you guys find a lot of pastors who when they finally do come in, their greatest fear is that they're going to have something taken away, but really that's the thing that they need the most? Does that happen a lot with you guys, I'm sure, or no?
It does. Honestly, it's very rare that a pastor gets a sabbatical. And that is sad. That is very sad because I don't think people understand the weight that pastors carry and that their families carry. So it's very rare when we see a pastor get that sabbatical.
Yeah.
But yes, that fear is associated with all the things that are happening back at home and things being said and decisions being made. And so sometimes they think the risk isn't worth it, but it always is. Yeah. When you're to a place you really need help, you need to get help. Yeah. And God will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I say. Listen, if you are a leader and you're listening to this thing, or if you are a senior pastor and you're listening to this thing, or you're a youth pastor, and you do not have scheduled time to step away to rest, number one, I love you, but shame on you. Number two, if you don't have it for your pastor, love them enough to say, shame on you. You got like if I'm afraid that if I step away, things are going to fall apart, then I haven't set it up the way that I think God wants us to set it up. And, you know, I think just a lot of times we're controlled by our fears of what I'm afraid is going to happen. Yeah. And honestly, most times that stuff doesn't ever actually happen. Yeah. But you do need help, man. I watched my dad go through some hurt. I watched my mom as the son of a pastor. I've watched them go through hurt. even now I'm I am an interim middle school youth pastor, but in ministry, I watch my kids and my family go through hurt, and it's tough.
Yeah. Well, and, I think about so when we talked about this on the podcast before, but it's been years now. I was had a lot of anxiety and was diagnosed and had to take medication. I remember the fear that I felt of what people would think when they found out that I had to rely on medication. Now I was going through counseling at the same time. It wasn't something that I was relying on entirely, but it was something that I worked through. And praise the Lord, all genuinely, all glory to God. I've been able to work through that, and I'm not on medication anymore. But I'm sure there's a lot of pastors out there who, one, they have to deal with the stigma, but then two, if they do go and get the help, not that they just went and got the help, but maybe afterwards, there's a lot of baggage that could come along. But I dealt with people who and they came from the best place. They meant all the right in the world when they did this, but they would go to my wife and say, are you safe? And ask her that, hey, he's being medicated for this anxiety. Is he is he do anything to hurt you? And they came from a good place asking that. They wanted to make sure she was safe. And of course the answer was yes. But there's a lot. I mean, pastors are going through some of this too. And especially because they're up on a stage. I wasn't on a stage. I'm not on a stage now, really. This is the closest thing I have to a stage. I mean, people aren't looking to me for guidance. Do you think, I guess I gave a lot of things to say without asking a question, but the question really is what does that mean for pastors? How do you work them through the aftermath of realizing they need help? And maybe it is medication with counseling. Maybe it's just counseling. Maybe it's taking steps away or moving things out of their life. How do you help them work through the repercussions of taking the right steps and being healthy?
Well, I definitely think mental illness, mental health is over-stigmatized.
Yeah.
And I think the first step is understanding that we are humans. Pastors are humans. Christians are humans. And we are not immune to these struggles. And I think that's important for us to remind ourselves of as ministry leaders, but also for the people in our churches and our community to give that grace and to have that understanding that pastors also struggle with these things. And that takes conversations about it. That takes awareness. That takes really talking about what mental illness is. And just because they're pastors or pastoral families, we're pastoral families, it doesn't disqualify us from pain.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And so we really need to have more conversations on what it really is, not what we think it is.
Okay.
And that's always going to happen. We can't change people's minds, everyone's minds. We can't help them see what we see and understand what we're going through. But I think God doesn't want us just to use our platforms to share the gospel and to be like, God called me to this, and I'm gonna be a good steward of what God called me to. But He also, I think, asks us to use our platforms to share the realities of what's going on in this world. And I think pastors have this amazing opportunity. And unfortunately, not every church creates an environment of safety, but pastors do have this amazing opportunity to be able to talk about these things and break down the walls so that people that they are ministering to can know that it's a safe place to start talking about their struggles as well.
It makes sense in my head. I'm just wondering if you can back this up, that probably the churches that don't have a plan, if there's hurting people in their church, if they don't have a plan, it probably makes it more difficult for the pastor to go and seek help. As well as if there's a pastor that really needs to go and seek help but is finding it difficult, he probably won't on the other side go and build a plan for, where in the best case scenarios, man, I'm struggling. Wow, my church doesn't have a plan. If I'm struggling, I guarantee you these people are struggling. So how do you help a church? She agreed with me, by the way, in case you're listening. Okay.
Yes, Kyle, that was the smartest thing said on this podcast so far.
Thank you, Krissie.
I agree.
So, okay. So Krissie, let's say that's a church. Pastor calls you, pastor's wife calls you guys, says, hey, my church does not have a plan. How does a church get started with a plan? Because some people are probably thinking, oh, we don't have the resources. We don't have all the things we can do. Where could they start? What could they do if they have nothing available right now?
Well, I think first is acknowledging it. Like, this is something our church needs, our community needs, and that's the first step. I think the next step is to start talking about it. I think it's wonderful that you were open and shared about your anxiety. I think that's where it starts, is just saying, this is something that's happening. We can't ignore it anymore. What can we do about it? And also, pastors are so overworked, and they feel the weight and responsibility to help in as many ways as possible to help the people in their church.
Yeah.
And so it's knowing to create a team around you to create a plan, not do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Like, create that team. And every church that I talk to and things I go to and share about mental illness, I encourage church leadership to talk about it. I encourage them to, if they don't have the resources, to start a ministry within their church. And there's so many out there now, like Freedom Ministry and different things that help with mental illness and those type of struggles. If they do not have those resources, then reach out to your community. Find faith-based Christian counselors that you can refer out to, and have those ready for people in your community and in your church when they come to you and they say, I'm struggling, and you can't help them personally as a pastor, or you don't have time, you're not equipped, then have that list ready to say, but we believe in faith-based counselors. We want to join you in prayer, and we want to join in helping you heal. Call one of these counselors and get an appointment. And I think that's just a good place to start.
Well, and this, I mean, we just talked about how, like, hey, I was willing to talk about, hey, I had anxiety. And honestly, for a long time, I didn't even think twice about it. But yeah, I'm anxious. I got diagnosed with anxiety by a doctor, and I took meds for a while and didn't even like think twice about it. And then over time, I gained a little more, it's not shame, but I guess a little more, man, I guess it's close to like shame. I felt a little more shame about it. And then now I've kind of come back out of that a little bit too, because as I worked through some more counseling since then, but it's a generational thing too, at least from what I've noticed. I mean, I'm on the kind of cusp of millennial Gen Z. I'm assuming you're like dead set millennial.
What makes you think? I'm Gen Z. Yes, you're right.
I'm not Gen Z either.
Chris,
you gotta be
Krissie and I are borderline Gen Alpha.
Yeah,
I'd
you're
know,
Gen X. I know you are.
No, the crazy thing is, because I'm 1980, they can't make up their mind if I'm Gen X or if I'm millennial.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
But you're, am I allowed to say?
I'm 43.
Yeah, you're 43.
Yeah,
That's
I
Gen
just said
X.
1980. The people were fast enough to do the addition in there.
But that's
no,
Gen X.
78. For most cases, 78 is when Gen X,
Is Gen X
ends.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
So I'm a 2-year.
Gen X.
represent.
Here's my prop. Yeah. So good. Keep going.
We're about to get on a complete different
We
topic.
digress.
So, but the millennial generation was kind of that transition time into the Gen Z, which is, I talk about everything and anything, and I'm open about like just what's happening in my life, and there's really no shame to anything that's happening. I mean, we see it. I mean, in our kids today, I feel like that's not only true about like mental health, but it's also true about like sexuality and I mean, that's actually the first one that came to my head, but there's a lot of things. I was supposed to say a lot of things. I said one thing, but there
are so many things. This one, yeah.
I guess that's the one that I think of the most.
but I
Yeah,
think
gender confusion.
Yeah, like, but being open about, like, they're like,
Identity,
I identify as this, and this in my sexuality. I am this, and this. I have this mental disorder that's gonna like that inhibits me in this way, and it's very heavy on identifying what those things are, naming those things, and then you also recognizing that naming. So we have a generation who's super open to all of that. We have the generation way before who is much more opposed to it on average. How do we transition? Many of our church leaders are Gen X, maybe boomers, maybe a little bit older, maybe the silent generation. I doubt many of them are silent.
if somebody out there is still preaching and you're the silent generation,
There's
you're my
a
hero.
silent
Preaching, but like
You're my
elders.
hero.
The silent generation is like, like after the Great Depression. But there are some who are like maybe still elders who are in their 80s and such. Yeah. But they're leading the church.
Yeah.
So how do we transition from this generation who's leading the church most likely, the new generation who is super open about it? How do we make that transition? And then this is a twofold question. So I'll lay it out and then we can hit it again. But like, what are the cons to this new generation's approach to mental health? That they're too open, maybe, and that's the question. Is there any cons that come along with that willingness to just talk about it? And I found some of those cons myself. So I'll probably speak into that as well. But I'm curious to hear your insight.
Yes, that is a big question, and I actually talked about that with some people earlier.
Oh, did you?
Because as a very young millennial, yes, I would say 5+ years ago, we weren't talking about mental illness in the church. It was definitely stigmatized. It was definitely separate from our faith and from our belief system. It was viewed upon as something other people struggled with. And just in the last 5 years, my goal has been, okay, let's educate the church on what mental illness really is, and that our faith does have a part. It has a role in what's going on mentally with people and with depression and anxiety. And I've been really working hard. And then all of a sudden, just in the past few years, there's been a shift from shame and people not talking about it and hiding it to it's being talked about all over the place. Yeah. And I probably shouldn't say this because I'm not in the Gen Z, but it's trauma is almost woke. Like it's almost idolized to
We talked about this last episode.
Yes, we did.
Some type of trauma.
So I'll update you so you're on the same page of what we were talking about last week is
Previously
the whole
on Stacking Chairs.
Previously on Stacking Chairs. We talked about how there's a whole mentality of the oppressor versus the oppressed. And if you're oppressed, you have a voice. And if you are the oppressor, you don't have a voice, but you are never in between. You're either the oppressor or you're the oppressed. And so if you're not the oppressed, you don't have a voice anymore. And the culture shifts so quickly that you must always be stigmatizing yourself or you will not have a voice anymore. I.e., you have homosexual white males who are now considered the oppressor because they're no longer on board with the transsexual movement. And so I've seen, on Twitter or Reddit or whatever else, at least in some of the chats I've seen. So maybe it's not as widespread as I think it is. But from what I've noticed, it seems that it's just constantly shifting. You're oppressed for a while, and then once you become mainstream, you are no longer marginalized. Therefore, you are the oppressor.
So do you think there's going to be a point as we continue down this pendulum swing that churches are going to go back to not talking about it because it's like, oh my goodness, once we start talking about it, that's all we ever talk about? Or do you think it's going to normalize itself more? Or
oh man, now we're getting into the meat. This is, Go ahead. I'm curious.
My hope is that we want to find a balance that it's normalized to talk about, but it's not idolized
Celebrated.
to struggle with mental illness and to constantly talk about it. Because I feel like some people think if they don't struggle, then they're missing out or they don't have a voice or an identity in today's society. And then what I'm seeing recently is comparison. Well, my trauma isn't as big as their trauma. And so they think, well, I guess my trauma doesn't matter. So it's a whole new set of issues right now with young adults and teens that we didn't see years ago. And it's really helping people discern, like, I think it really goes down to identity. Is really understanding, like, you don't have to be this and this to feel like you matter. Like, let's go back to the basics and the truth and the foundation of who God made you to be. Because right now, identity is everywhere.
Well, and our identity is in Christ. Like we have the benefit of being given an identity. And, we've always heard the analogy of the train on the train tracks, right? Like the train on the train tracks is happy because train on train track go straight. Train on not train track go everywhere and be gone.
Why use many words when few words
do trick?
You like halfway.
No, I did it on purpose as kind of like, it's so rudimentary that you just kind of just.
No, but it is. And it does boil down to that. I'm just concerned. The church many times finds the new hobby horse, fears it, preaches against it, finds out it's popular, embraces it, overemphasizes it. Now,
we're Pokemon Go.
No, seriously. So, okay, this is probably the worst. This is probably the worst tie over I can think of. But the Da Vinci Code.
Oh, yeah.
When that thing came out and every church, blah, 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 until it reached a point where people were exhausted about it. Well, obviously, I think that talking about mental health is so much more important than talking
Pokemon.
About
in the 90s, everyone despised Pokemon.
When everybody started talking about the dysfunctional family, I remember.
The pocket monsters, the demons in your pocket. It was like a big thing.
It was a Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi. Oh, is that one of the other ones?
Yeah, those were the ones. The little
Man.
things were.
But I remember
I missed
my
that.
mom didn't let me
Little
play with
Furbies?
Pokemon as a kid. Oh, Furbies are of the devil.
See, for me, it was Harry Potter. That was the huge.
Well, I can't believe you even mentioned that.
But that's the thing. Now Harry Potter's seen as allegorical.
Yes.
And so you've gone from, and
That's
now
because she revealed that she's a Christian, so now everybody
yeah,
loves her.
but that's the thing is like it went from this place of, hey, this is bad witchcraft. Hey, this is bad pocket monsters. And then you have a generational shift. You have all the people who couldn't have it. And then they realize, oh, it's really not that bad. And now I'm on the other side. And I look at my mom and I say, Mom, I'm playing Pokemon Go, back in
like,
2016.
great.
She goes, who cares? Like Pokemon was bad in the 90s. It's not bad now.
Right, but
is that what this is for the church?
But that's what I'm concerned about is are we going to reach a point where it becomes the thing where the younger generation is like, you're not taking this seriously, which I'm going to be honest with you. In some ways, we've got a bunch of people that are talking about it and not doing anything about it.
Oh, because it's trendy to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. It's trendy to talk about.
Oh, man.
If you think about it, all the cool pastors
Yeah. Or just talking about, and self-care.
fit it into some.
Self-care. Dude, I'm telling you, there's a
Excuse
whole...
me, I feel a little called out right now. Could you stop?
Self-care? No, but like I saw a pastor talk the other day and he was saying like almost the right thing and it sounded like the right thing. And then as I actually unpacked it, I'm like, he was basically saying like, if loving somebody else gets in the way of like loving yourself, then you shouldn't be loving those people. You're loving them wrong. And I was like, I feel like there's part truth
You
there,
think
which
this
is,
happens by chance?
yeah, there's the truth part of that is if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not making sure that you're refilled, you can't help fill other people. If you have an empty cup, you can't fill other cups.
Oh, listen,
That part's true, but he was,
I've got people that I interact
Distort.
with that will say, I'm just not at a good place, so it's okay for me not to love you well, but you can love me well.
Yeah.
And it's like,
My wife and I were just talking about this last night about the importance of self-reflection. And I was like, I spend so much of my day just like finding the balance between self-loathing and recognizing that I'm a sinner, and then recognizing I'm saved by grace, and then also recognizing that my works help define like how I live for the Lord. And that balance between the two of I hate myself and I love myself, and finding the balance of no, I'm not enough, but through Christ I'm enough, and I want to live this way because I want to exemplify Christ. And that is such, again, it's all balance. I mean, it's
no, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
I've got to be okay with the idea of I'm never going to be perfect. And for some people, that's so debilitating. I love my daughter, but I had a daughter that had one of the greatest teachers in her life would look at her and say, you don't have to be perfect and you're never going to be. And I just was like, that is so freeing,
Yeah.
And then working with, listen, I'm sorry that you don't feel like you're at a spot that you can be loving, but you know what? I can still love you, or you can still act loving. But then it's an act. No, it's not.
But here's the thing. I mean, you if you practice it, it
Slap the
becomes who you
microphone.
are. Like, I mean, my wife, she doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say this.
Aw.
No, that's not a bad thing.
By the way,
She might
Mela,
now.
she will
I'm
now.
gonna tell her to
She's gonna
listen.
find out that I said. This.
anytime you want to be a guest on the podcast, come on.
But like, my wife is hard to love sometimes, and choosing to love her in moments is such an important. We had this conversation last night where I'm like, Mela, like, I know this is something that's important to you, and so I'm going to make an effort to do this better. I need you to make an effort to recognize when I'm doing it, and communicating and talking through those things. I forget what the point was that I was coming from. We were talking about.
I just want you to know my wife is always easy to love and is wonderful. And my wife doesn't listen to the podcast.
What I'm hearing from both of y'all going back and forth, I'm kind of
She's going to give us a counseling session.
I know that's such a counseling thing to say. What I'm hearing you say, but is that y'all have the tools and you have the knowledge and you have the foundation to work through these things.
Yeah.
And as ministry leaders and people that work with people, we need to teach them that. Because as they wrestle with these things, and like you said, I think my fear with what's happening with the mental illness movement is that people become desynthesized. I knew I couldn't say that word.
Desensitized.
Desynthesized, and we'll add in like a wow.
Desensitized.
Synthesized music.
Yeah.
Yeah, they become numb to what's really going on because now it's a fad. It's not actually an issue that people really struggle with.
Thank you.
And that is my fear.
That's what's happening.
And that is why it's so important, like y'all were talking, to have those foundational truths, those tools to know, okay, yes, I'm feeling these things. Yes, I'm experiencing these struggles, or I'm having a hard time loving this person. But because we know Christ, because we have the foundational truths that we learned through, maybe it's camp here at Word of Life, maybe it's just having a really solid family that taught us that from childhood. But as long as we have those, we can work through these other things that like really jack up our minds at times, right? Can I say that word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's jacked up that you just said that.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure.
You derailed her, Kyle.
I desensitized.
I'm so smart.
So let me ask you this, Krissie. Again, maybe somebody who, and I tell this to my team all the time, naturally, when we are in care of when we are in a position to care for other people spiritually, we tend to listen for other people rather than ourselves. But hopefully today, somebody who is in care of somebody else spiritually listened for themselves and said, man, I could use some help. Maybe I'm not in the worst place ever. And honestly, you don't have to wait until you're in the worst place ever. But I could use some help. Krissie, if they're in ministry, where can they reach out to? How can they get in contact with Care for Pastors?
Oh, okay. So
give us a plug.
Shameless plug.
No shameless.
No, I'm not ashamed.
Come on.
Man, I cannot speak highly enough about the ministry because with my personal story and our struggle with mental illness in our family and even suicide, I wish something like Care for Pastors, it was around. I just didn't know about it. And that's why these conversations are so important. Yeah. So that we can tell people there are places available for you to get help. So careforpastors.org, you can go to pastorskids.org, and you can submit a request for counseling. There's blogs, there's resources to encourage you. And we even offer on-site care. Like if you're like, this is to a point, I need to step away. I need to get intensive counseling at a deeper level. We offer that as well. And you can find all that.
That's in Leesburg? Okay,
In
gotcha.
Leesburg.
Okay.
Tell us about your book. You got to talk about the book. The book is too good not to talk about.
Thank you. Well, I co-authored a book with the infamous, the amazing Rob Phillips. He is a pastor, a theologian, very involved with Word of Life, grew up with Word of Life. And he came to me and he said, let's talk about this. This is something that needs to be talked about in the Christian world and really understood, because I think we have our preconceived ideas, and we need to let people know that, again, going back to what I said earlier, is that our faith does play into mental health. And we actually see mental health all throughout Scripture, mental illness throughout Scripture, and our biblical heroes who went through things like depression and even thoughts of dying. And I think I'm going off. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I go into it. I just want people to know that you can love God and God loves you, and you can struggle with these things. And we see that in Scripture. And this book really goes into that and bridges that gap and answers questions that we have as believers. And it's called Open Letters to Our Fellow Fighters. I do know the title of the book. Open Letters to Our Fellow Fighters. And it's stories of people who have gone through it. And it's really helping people have a clear understanding of mental illness.
It's a fantastic book.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Very easy read.
Yeah.
Very hard. Well, easy read, in other words, like I didn't sit there and go, I feel like I need to read that sentence again because it didn't make sense. But a hard read, and oh my goodness, like there are hurting people. But man, made me feel like heard, made me feel cared for, made me feel like this is great. Tell us about your blog. Come on, tell us about the blog.
Have you read my blog?
I have. I have not read all of your blog.
Because I haven't really written on it in a couple of years.
Krissie Joy.
It is KrissieJoy.com.
Kyle's been reading old blog posts thinking it was like happening
It was
recently.
good for a while. Well, the point is I really talk openly about our struggle with mental illness. My late husband, who was wonderful, who was a dear friend of yours, Kyle, after a very long battle of depression and struggles with mental illness, actually ended up taking his life. And after that, I came to a lot of realizations that I didn't know before. And I feel like I grew closer to the Lord and understanding His love and grace for issues like this. And so I talk a lot about that. I talk about my grief journey and really trying to help people and be open. to let other people know struggling, they don't have to hide. They don't have to get to a point where they feel like they have to take their life in order to find healing. There's healing on this side of heaven. There's purpose on this side of heaven. And yes, complete healing is when God calls us home. But that's really what I've written about, is to give people hope, and hopefully they'll never have to get to that point that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen.
Josh, how many things can we put in the feed? Like in the area?
Man, I can have a list of like,
because I think we need to put a link to the book on Amazon. I think we need to put a link to Krissie Joy.
Yeah, we can do all
I
that.
think we need to put a link for Care for Pastors, and I think you need to talk to Dylan. We need to put the link to the video that we did. Tommy and I did.
Oh, we can do
with
that.
Krissie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a solid video.
Yeah.
Just great resource out there. I think
Explain that a little bit more.
so. Like Krissie said, her late husband was one of my best friends, and reached a point where he felt like he didn't have any hope, and he took his life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so a couple years ago, the camp director up on the island, Tommy Sewell, was like, "Hey, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about depression and anxiety." And he said, "I think I'm ready to talk about it. Are you ready to talk about it?" And I was like, "I think I'm ready to talk about it." Come to know that day we were, but it was one of the hardest and yet the best conversation. We had to stop the camera at least multiple times and be like, "All right, can we just pause?"
Yeah.
But it just was good. It was very healing. It was fun. It was uniting. And so we just talk about it. His name was Eric. We talk about Eric's story. We talk about his life. We talk about the decision that he had to take his life, and how Krissie has sought to find hope and to push through and to continue on, and resources. And then I was on another podcast, Recovering Fundamentalist, and Tommy and I got to talk about it there.
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
You're going to give me an Excel sheet of all the things I'm putting in
the church.
in the end of
the
this.
church needs to be talking about this, because we for far too long we have avoided it, and for far too long we as the church have tried to act like if we just ignore it, it's going to go away, and it's not going to go away.
Well, and I think we need to make an important distinction before we wrap up here, which is the whole. We talked about like it's becoming a fad, and then talking about the importance of, hey, if you need this, you need this. I think just like anything else, it's a balance of making sure that you're not just getting on a bandwagon of, hey, I want to be the oppressed, but you're also not jumping on a bandwagon of like, well, I don't actually need this because I don't want to jump on the bandwagon. And there is some spot in the middle where you have some self-reflection. That's where I was talking about it. That's why I was bringing up self-reflection. That only took 20 minutes to figure out. All right.
Sense.
But self-reflecting and saying, okay, this is where I'm at, spending time in the Word, going to a friend who can keep you accountable and saying, this is something I'm noticing about myself. I'm thinking about getting help. Do you think like this is something wise? And finding that core group of people, and don't go through it alone. I mean, you guys know that too, and our audience, you guys listen, and you're looking for resources because you're looking for connectivity, or you're looking for getting new ideas on how to lead. Well, go to the people around you and find the community that you need in your own home church. And if you're not part of a home church and you're just listening, get inside of a home church, get inside of a community, because being in our home church. And Kyle always jokes about how my youth pastor, I'd never say anything bad about him.
He's like the Apostle Paul.
He's like the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
but I do think so highly of working with the youth pastor that I do, Matt. And because of him and other people in my church, I have that community. And that's how I can tell you that, like, I've gone through the anxiety and things like that. And a large part of it is the community I've built here.
I think we either make churches that don't allow people to hurt, or we can just as easily swing to the other end of the pendulum where all we do is consistently talk about the hurt, but we never process through the hurt. And both of those areas are wrong. Both of those areas can be very destructive.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I think it's actually worse to not talk about it at all. But
it could just be as bad.
But the church is there to help people.
Yeah.
The church is there to help people.
Well, I'll tell this last story before we probably should wrap up. But there was there was a lady once who talked about how she had friends who would talk about how they had made friends with their depression instead of fighting against their depression. And she would talk about how, like, you know, she could like see that they were kind of embracing it too much, and like she would actually equate it a lot to like how demonic it seemed, that like they were almost like welcoming in depression and making friends with it. But we got to be careful that we don't.
It.
Yeah. You idolize the hurt instead of worshiping the Creator.
Well, I think, and that's where I'm concerned for young students today. If we make it woke and if we make it a trendy thing, it becomes my identity. And if it becomes my identity and I lose that part of me, I don't know who I am. And that's scarier.
You only have one identity if you are a follower of Christ, and it's in Christ.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, because the things that we struggle with, that's not our identity.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just want to add this real quick.
No, please.
No, please.
Whatever side you are on, if you are on the side that's like, I want to keep hiding in it, I'm ashamed of it, or you're on the side of, I want to talk about it all the time, and I want to be friends with my struggle or what I think I'm experiencing. Whatever side you are on, and you're listening to this, I want to encourage you, and even church leaders that are listening to it, to help the people they minister to. I want to encourage these people to come back to, you're a child of God. Don't live in this struggle. Don't live in it. Get help for it, because God has an abundant life for you, and these are not you.
Yeah.
These are not you. Wherever you're at, if you need to get help, because there's an abundant life beyond all of this. And not meaning that the struggle is going to go away. What it means is like there's more for you. So always seek to find healing and always keep trying and fighting to not live here, but to live the life that God wants you to live.
There is hope, and his name is Jesus.
Absolutely.
Hey, Josh, I think it's important that we step into small group. Small group is a time for us to just kind of talk about maybe issues of the day, maybe talk about our lives, maybe dive into something different, or get to know our special guests a little bit more.
Which is our favorite
small group. And so, Krissie, you kind of hinted at it a little bit, but we would love to hear just what was it in your life that God used to draw you to go down this road and chase the career path that you've chased?
First of all, I'm digging this music.
Yeah,
I'm feeling it.
We call it groovy elevator music.
Yeah,
it is. I'm like, so it was actually before my late husband passed away that I was called into ministry, and I knew that I wanted to help people. I had experienced hurt in my life. A counselor really helped me and guided me towards healing, and so I really felt like that's where the Lord wanted me, is to be in a place where I could help other people. Yes, they know hurt, but there is a path to healing. So that's really what brought me into it. And then what really just gave me a passion to move forward and help other people was the life. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be serious at this time.
No, it's good.
Okay.
It was the life and the death of Eric, of my late husband. And that just, I think, affirms even more that God sees value in faith-based counseling, that he is using it and that he is using me beyond our circumstances and everything that has happened to help people.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And God doesn't always do this in everybody's story, but I got to stand there at the day that Krissie and her current husband, her new husband, got married and have just started a beautiful life. I'm sure there's stuff to walk through as there is in every marriage.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, you guys are
Perfect
perfect. Well, that's just Cam.
You guys are like me and my wife. We're perfect
That's just
too.
Cam.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest. Okay.
Or me.
By the way, Cam, anytime you want to be on the podcast, you are more than welcome to come and be on the podcast. By the way, Cam, you need to come with her to Florida at least one of these times.
Yeah, called out.
Seriously.
Yeah, Cam.
Called out Cam.
I don't know.
But listen, I'm going to tell you right now,
gonna call him
Cam
that.
could beat you up.
I don't doubt that. Why was he beating me up?
I mean,
Where did that come from?
He may work out some. Maybe.
Okay.
Some.
I do not.
He dated the gym for like a while.
Nice.
But no, listen, but it's awesome to watch like a story not stay in the hurt. Now, not that you have to get remarried to get out of that hurt.
No.
But again, so much of all that Krissie has been talking about, and so much of all we want to talk about today. And this thing is, there ought to be hope. There ought to be like coming out of that spot. And it's just a beautiful story. It's really, really cool.
That's cool.
So thanks for letting us be a part of that.
Yeah.
No, thank y'all for having me.
And thank you for letting us steal away some of your time. I know you got to prep for your next session here, but thank you for taking the time to be here today. Guys, this has been Stacking Chairs. As always, check us out on Stacking Chairs Pod at WOL.org for an email. Check us out at Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere for our social media. We want to hear from you. We want to talk to you. Check out our community group. You can get in there, share some ideas, share some thoughts. Kyle.
Yeah, make sure that you like, share, subscribe. Listen, we would love for you to pass this on to other people, pass this on to other
long
ministries.
list.
Yeah, check out the list about as long as your early 3-year-old Santa list about how many things you wanted. But listen, guys, there's so many resources out there. We want you to know the hope that is there for you and for you to get that hope out to your people. But most importantly, Josh, you have to be organized as you. Stack those chairs!